speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July by Frederick Douglass. Both of these men were radical leaders in their own times. One saw in his present a future of uncompromising brotherhood and justice. One saw in his present a wicked and unjust society celebrating a wicked and unjust founding. I'll talk about Mr. Douglass first, because before we can step into the future, we must know and embrace our past. On June 28th, 1776, the Committee of Five presented the Declaration of Independence to the Second Continental Congress. On July 2nd, that Congress declared the sovereign status of the United Colonies, and on July 4th, after two major edits and a few minor ones, the Declaration was adopted and the United States was born. All of the signers were men. All were white. 48 were born in America and 8 were born outside the colonies or in the British Isles. Most of the signers were educated and prosperous in their 30s and 40s. The oldest was Pennsylvanian Ben Franklin at 70. The youngest, Edward Rutledge of South Carolina, was 26. 15 of the 56 were from southern states. The rest were from northern states. One estimate of slaveholders puts the number at 34, another at 41. It's a hard number to determine. It is safe to say that both Northerners and Southerners had slaves. Most came to the Congress as seeds for reconciliation, but the events of the Revolution moved with such speed that their hands were forced into action by the handful of anarchists intent upon the establishment of a country of their own. And lest there be any doubt, a country of their own meant one that would look and act like them. White, propertied men. This was the reason for the passages which outlined the grievances of Native Americans against colonial encroachments and which condemned the slave trade were voted out of this founding document. My father often said, you cannot legislate morality. We can make laws of regulation, but we cannot regulate the morality of those engaged in their deployment. Deeply embedded in our national DNA, in the writings and actions of our founding fathers, is a moral lesson. The white race is morally better than any other race on the planet. As Douglass said in his speech, I am not included within the pales of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. In 1976, I was 17, which, if you want to do a quick calculation, I'm now 67. And full of the fever of Philadelphia freedom. Celebrations across the country confirmed our own brand of navel gazing, despite international tensions in China, South Africa, and the Middle East. Oh, so much has changed. Cities, towns, big and small, took every opportunity to wave the stars and stripes, sing the Star-Spangled Banner, and watch the fireworks as predicted by John Adams. Although we didn't know it yet, the greatest thing about 1976 was Steve Jobs and Stephen Wozniak's incorporation of Apple and Rupert Murdoch acquiring the New York Post, powering the rush into our future present. I'm a Southerner, born and bred. I used to have a little sign in my office, American by birth, Virginian by the grace of God. My father gave me that, along with a high school history book, A History of Virginia. I remember that I think it was blue on the outside, the cover, and on the paragraph on slavery, there was a bucolic picture of happy slaves dancing. The reality was far different, of course. Douglas continues, I hear the mournful wail of millions whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilant shouts that reach them. Am I to argue that it is wrong to make men brutes, to rob them of their liberty, to work them without wages, to keep them ignorant of their relations to their fellow men, to beat them with sticks, to flay their flesh with the lash, to load their limbs with irons, to hunt them with dogs, to sell them at auction, to sunder their families, to knock out their teeth, to burn their flesh, to starve them into obedience and submission to their masters? Surely this was not how humans were created to act. So we must set the record straight. Men are lazy. In the whole world, they will subjugate their fellow man to make their own lives easy. I don't think there is another species on earth that is so lazy, so arrogant, so truly narcissistic. And the race of man that has ascended this pyramid of subjugation is white. It is hard to hear this. And believe me, it's harder to say it. Which is our second sin as a country, the inability to state the truth of our history. Douglas says, but I hear some of my audience say, it is just in this circumstance that you and your brother abolitionists fail to make a favorable impression upon the public mind. Would you argue more and denounce less? Would you persuade more and rebuke less? Your cause would be so much more likely to succeed. Reminds me of the current administration's efforts to spare the little white children from the awfulness of learning about slavery, or the genocide of the indigenous population, or the incarceration of Asian Americans, or of Jim Crow. Oh, the poor little dears. I went to Brazil in 1976, and I was truly shocked to learn the Brazilians didn't think much of Americans. Remember, I was in the full fever of American independence and American exceptionalism. We were the shining light on the hill, a new Jerusalem. Lady Liberty had lit her golden torch and opened the doors of our country to the tired, the poor, the wretched refuse? Oh, no, not them. We only want the teeming million and billion and trillionaires. Only the white people from South Africa. Not the black immigrant who worked for free in the cotton fields, or the barely paid Asian immigrant who built the railroad, or the brown immigrant who picked the crops of California and still do. Not now, anyway. All of the blessings of liberty have already been secured by the right, white people. I am so tired. I want the entire Treasury Department to shut down their computers, turn off their lights, and walk out. I want to stop paying for a ballroom, an arch, thugs and traitors in the streets terrorizing my fellow Americans. I want to bankrupt the weak-willed, barely conscious oligarchs of my taxes, subsidizing their laziness. I want to see the men and women of this useless government tried for treason, and those that are convicted, I want to see them locked up immediately. In Guantanamo Bay Prison. Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so the birds come and perch in its branches." He told them another parable. "The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed into 60 pounds of flour until it worked all through the dough." The mustard seed is a powerful bit of political messaging. A single individual is planted in the community, nurtured by that community, blossoming into a tree capable of supporting the weight of the other members of that community. But the parable following, the parable of the yeast, is even more powerful. A bit of yeast scattered in the dough, then carefully kneaded, rhythmic and steady. You cannot work too slowly. You push through quickly, never letting it rest for too long between turns. And if you get tired, you ask someone else to step in and continue the kneading process. The mustard seed is a passive voice, attractive to individuals who don't want to be pushed. We are, of course, all mustard seeds, waiting for the community to lift us up, to offer the sustenance of social justice. But the true advocate is and must be an active voice in the community. The message is a steady beat, incessant, constant, quickly able to pivot into support of the ideas of diversity, fairness, justice for all. They are the kneader of the dough, working in the yeast of commitment to the ideals, creating nourishment for all of the members of the community. At the beginning, it is messy. It's a messy process, sticky flour scattered everywhere. But the more the dough is worked on, the quicker the dough will form. We must be the yeast, raising up the community's social justice consciousness. We must be active in our movement as far as we are able. And when it is time for us to rest, those that come after us will have our example to follow. All is not lost. We start by facing our first sin, the sin of privilege, the root of all sins. The sin that the white male should be the master merely because of the color of his skin. Douglas ended his speech with the following: "For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm. The feeling of the nation must be quickened, and the conscience of the nation must be roused." We can face this together because we share a history, but also a vision that all men, women, trans, queer, Black, brown, Asian, and white people are created equal and endowed with certain unalienable rights. And the first of these must be equality. As our spiritual ancestor, Ralph Waldo Emerson, reminds us, this time, like all times, is a very good one, if we but know what to do with it. What will be our next step, my next step, your next step into the full equality of all people? Amen and blessed be. know I'm supposed to do something next. I'll be darned if I can come to words with here we go. Reading, joys and sorrows, sermon. Oh, then I sit down. Oh, the closing hymn.
We'll do it together.
Okay.